Morning, we are joined by one of the most competent, intelligent people you'll ever talk to, and now you have to live up to that, Natasha Srdoc from America's Roundtable radio program and the co-founder of the International Leaders Summit. How you doing this morning, Natasha?
Doing great, Dave. Thank you for having me, and also good morning to your listeners and viewers. And actually, this is no pressure with your comments.
No pressure at all. Well, you're in friendly territory, Natasha, so everything will be fine.
I'm glad.
Before we talk about anything else, I want to make sure, because we'll hit it again before we get done, you've got a very special guest on America's Roundtable coming up tomorrow morning on SuperTalk, don't you?
That's right. It's Lara Trump, co-chair of Republican National Committee. And actually, it's a must hear interview with her take on economy, immigration, security at southern border, as well as foreign policy and democracy, because all those issues are issues that voters are of both sides are saying are the highest priority for them. So we really delve into the details. So we have to say 7:30, tune in tomorrow, 7:30 on SuperTalk Mississippi. You have to listen to Lara Trump.
And she's been making the rounds, and I've picked up on some of the chatter online. Some people are surprised by just how intelligent and how eloquent she is.
Yes, she's very eloquent, very articulate, very precise. I mean, she really gets to the point in no time. Basically, she can, in a few minutes, she explains the whole issue, all the issues that are actually affecting Americans. And I mean, she's a very, very effective communicator. So it's a really must listen tomorrow morning, 7:30 on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Well, and what I think probably makes that more challenging for her is the fact that it seems like every morning former President Trump wakes up with another great idea, and then he goes to a rally and he lets everybody know, and it's like, wait, you've already given us 12 great ideas. Why did we need more? But it's just continuous. He keeps adding to his ideas, for example, about cutting taxes. He's got a lot of different ideas along those lines, doesn't he?
Right. Yes, he has lots of ideas, and actually, when you look at his ideas, they are not just random, because there are principles behind them. Because one of the main principles that you can recognize among his tax ideas is that he's trying to broaden the base and reduce the tax rate for everyone, and that actually helps economic growth. And what we need the most at this time is economic growth, so that our businesses are growing, our families are having high prosperity, being better off, higher salaries. Everyone is better off. You actually, with reducing tax rate, you gain in increasing tax revenue. And actually, I would also invite your listeners and viewers to visit America's Roundtable program on americasrt.com, where we featured Dr. Arthur Laffer. Arthur Laffer is also known as the father of the supply side economics. And he explains it so well because he did a research since 1913, analyzing every income tax return in America, and coming with an unequivocal result, which showed that whenever taxes were raised on 1% of highest earners, the actually economic growth fell, revenues fell, and people were much worse off because unemployment kicked in and people lost jobs. So whenever the taxes were actually not increased, when they are reduced, then you have higher tax revenues, more growth, and people are better off. So basically, they need to listen to Dr. Arthur Laffer and experience. Experience shows that you can't raise taxes and expect to grow. So we see very clear distinction between the two candidates. Donald Trump has proven it. He reduced taxes, and we have high economic growth, lower prices, no inflation, good mortgage rates, even foreign policy, but that is another area. So we were much better off with Trump than with the last 4 years and what Kamala is proposing.
Well, that's part of the problem. No one really, including her, knows what she's proposing, other than Trump is bad. That's her entire platform, it seems like, at this point, which is not very compelling. I'm sorry, especially when you look at history, which is what you're talking about. We have a track record, not only from President Trump, but from previous Republican administrations. We see the difference it makes in daily Americans' lives with the conservative approach to government and to taxation and the liberal approach. It is night and day, the difference between those two methodologies, I think.
Right, because you know what, Democrats of the left in America is actually working the same way as communist regimes in Eastern Europe, basically. Because when you think about the highly progressive tax rate that we have today, still in America, it was firstly introduced by Karl Marx. So highly progressive, these brackets of 39, 27, 17 or so. So it's just, before that, it was a flat tax, which we tried to bring back, meaning you have one low tax that affects everyone the same. So everyone pays taxes proportionally to their income, but basically you remove all those incentives, loopholes, deductions, and special interest groups, incentives that they are lobbying for. So basically Democrats like high taxes because they will always provide loopholes for their friends and their donors because they're lobbying. I mean, you had years in which certain large companies, I don't want to mention names now, but large known companies, American companies that were based in America were not paying any taxes because they lobbied for exactly those loopholes that affect only them. I mean, that would be considered corruption in certain countries. In our country, having high tax rates reduces the tax revenue because of these companies and lobbyists and those that can afford lawyers to get those loopholes. So average people that with median income really don't get those loopholes, and they pay taxes. And it's actually, by raising taxes, we reduce their well-being, our well-being altogether.
Well, and part of the problem is, and we saw this during the first Trump administration, where he put the rule in place to where if you were going to pass a new regulation, tax or otherwise, you needed to eliminate two. That was his rule to reduce it, because the more complicated anything becomes in its operation, the easier it is to game that system for your own benefit. The tax system in America has gotten ridiculously complicated over the years, and there are a lot of little nooks and crannies where you can kind of nose around and figure out a way to twist it around to your end. One of the proposals that President Trump has talked about here in the last couple of days is the thought that ultimately, I think he would like this. He would like to completely do away with income tax and replace it with tariffs. Now, tariffs have been a big conversation lately. I don't know that we'll ever get completely to that point. But you got to shoot for the stars and wind up much higher than you were to begin with. What is your take on tariffs and the way this is being proposed and the way you think it would play out?
Right. So basically, in theory, international trade is best when it's a free trade. When countries are trading with comparative advantage, with certain products are produced better by others. Certain nations we produce better some other products with cost effectiveness. So basically, tariffs are not good in theory, but in practice, there are certain countries that are have dumping prices. They also have state subsidies and are actually getting to the point, if they establish market dominance, then we're in trouble because we allow foreign governments to be in our country and reduce prices. Once we don't have any other competition, they can establish monopoly. I mean, there are different ways of, it's very dangerous in today's world where you have these authoritarian regimes that are dominating, like China. And from the perspective of taxing, it's always better to tax consumption than income because of the incentives. Because when you tax income, you always get less of it. So you're going to have people that can work a little bit more, but they won't work because that little bit more will be taxed more. So they say, okay, I'm not going to work more because I don't want to incur taxes to pay to the government. For the businesses, it's especially so because they can move in today's world. They can move to Ireland, they can move to other low tax jurisdictions and base the headquarters there. And in that way, we don't get any tax revenue. I mean, that was remedied through Trump's special tax that he allowed a number of these foreign companies to repatriate their income because he introduced a low tax for repatriation. So basically, it's always better to tax consumption than income because incentives you don't want to really. But basically, we still have it in U.S. Constitution, and I think it won't work completely. But we have to reduce at a very, very low level.
Yeah, like I said, shoot for the stars. At least you could wind up in orbit, which would be a positive outcome, I think. We're talking with Natasha Srdoc, the co-host of America's Roundtable radio program tomorrow morning at 7:30 with Lara Trump, and we'll continue with her right after this here on SuperTalk Mississippi on the Gallo Show. Keep it here. You can always tell when Lance is in the booth. Welcome back to the Gallo Show on SuperTalk Mississippi. Natasha Srdoc with us from America's Roundtable tomorrow morning again, 7:30. They've got Lara Trump on the show, so that's going to be a really good interview. And one of the things you mentioned in the last segment that I know for a fact will come up is immigration. I just get the sense that there's some people coming around to the concept of, hey, you know what, maybe we should do something about this that didn't previously understand the problem as it was. Do you get that feeling?
Yes, I think immigration is actually sometimes first, sometimes second on top of the voters, basically on minds, because it's every state is a border state, every city is a border city. Violence is on the rise, crime is on the rise, and it doesn't really work. So basically, even when we think about federal spending on immigrants, what they're saying, putting some prepaid debit cards and giving accommodation and food and all what needs to be done for they say over 9 or now 10 million illegal immigrants that came into the country last 4 years. It's a tremendous burden for American taxpayers. And on another note, what we are going to talk about tomorrow with Lara as well is that, the policy of illegal immigration is so obvious when you think about the fact that one of the first executive orders by Biden-Harris administration was to remove Trump's introduced order to actually exclude illegal immigrants from Census Bureau data. So meaning now illegal immigrants are included in census, which means that congressional seats are apportioned based on the number of illegal immigrants. So we're getting new congressmen from sanctuary cities, men and women and other legislators from sanctuary cities and states. Basically, it makes sense for the left to allow illegal immigrants to come in if they're going to favor them as a political party. On the other side, illegal immigrants are already voting in certain states and jurisdictions, like in D.C. here in our neighborhood, in Vermont, Maryland, and California. And based on that, how could they refuse the ID requirement as a proof registration of citizenship for voting? Proof of citizenship for voting. It's so obvious that it's like, how can we game the system in order to allow illegal immigrants to vote so we don't have to have elections anymore, because we're going to always be winning from now onward. So these elections are crucial. And Elon Musk also raised that point that these are historic elections and everybody has to come out to vote and vote with their heart. And, looking at the principles, basically, of immigration, economy, inflation, foreign policy, we were much better off with President Trump than last 4 years. And it's just so obvious.
Well, and the question that I like to ask people when they start talking about how America was built on immigration, we need to let these people in, the usual talking points in favor of illegal immigration. The question I like to ask in response, a little bit of a pattern interrupt. I like to ask, well, let me ask you something. At your house, do you lock your door at night? Do you close your door when you go home? If you do, then you're for keeping people out of your property unless you allow them in with your permission. Same thing with a country as it is with your house. This is not that difficult of a concept to understand, I don't think.
Correct, Dave. And another analogy I was thinking on my own, these are my thoughts. I'm thinking sanctuary cities and sanctuary states, they don't cooperate with ICE. So basically, they just refuse to cooperate with federal government. So how would that be if IRS, we just left states and sanctuary cities for IRS, and they just refuse to cooperate with IRS in actually collecting taxes? I beg your pardon, you would have federal government force of it on every sanctuary cities or state of that kind. So why can't we enforce federal laws in sanctuary cities and states that are allowing illegal immigrants to be protected, even violent crime illegals protected, which is mind-boggling.
Well, it is. And to me, there is a simple, easy first step there. If you're going to be a sanctuary city and willfully ignore federal law, well, federal money is going to ignore you. That seems to be the easy first step.
Yes, I agree with you. And as you said, actually, we all like, I am a first immigration immigrant. Actually, I became a citizen just in the last decade. And there are so many first generation immigrants that we're connecting with and have interviews with. Ambassador Pete Hoekstra is the also first generation immigrant who is a GOP chief in Michigan. Director, and basically, when you look at immigration, everybody wants immigration. It's an immigrant country, America, and people are still wanting to come in. So, meaning we have something very good to offer, and people are looking up to America and our Constitution, our Declaration of Independence, our check and balances, and the rule of law that we provide, that we have upheld so far. So we need to have these elections done in a certain way. We need to win.
Well, we're really glad to have you, and you make America better being here. So thank you for picking us. You could have went anywhere. You came here to the greatest country in the world. Natasha Srdoc, the co-host of America's Roundtable. Lara Trump, a guest tomorrow morning.
Thank you so much, Dave, for having me.